Atrast Vala, brothers and sisters, I am Desher Tarat. My videos pertain to all things related to the Dragon Age series. The content my channel provides assumes you've already played at least one of the Dragon Age games, so this is the blanket spoiler warning for the video. If you want to help grow my channel, feel free to comment below with suggestions and other video ideas. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. Atrast Vala, brothers and sisters, this is Desher Tarat here, and I'm going to be exploring another Dragon Age build with you guys today. Today we have the loyal Fiance hailing from the alienage of Denerim. I'm going to be telling you guys about their role-playing, skills, abilities, relationships, and their specializations, so you can go into Dragon Age Origins with a new way to play. The loyal Fiance, or LF, is a male city elf rogue that had always felt the oppression under the noble lord's boot and felt that if he could save enough pennies, he and his fiancée could go leave Denerim and into the world of Thedas, buying some farmland property or something to get them out of there. This is the dream that would always keep him going during the toughest of times. The loyal Fiance had grown up in Denerim being a bright-eyed, rambunctious child, and he was often found running around the alienage. He was an innocent boy who had often loved the idea of finding treasure in the things that were dusty and looked over. However, because of his elven status, his innocence was quickly shattered as the harsh realities of the world kept bringing itself to his face. After constant battering, he had realized that humans were what was wrong with the world. The Dalish were conquered by the humans that betrayed them. Human lords had often been seeing themselves as over him and his elven brethren. And oh boy, that whole thing with Lord Vaughn, but I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. The LF had initially come to focus more on survival in this human world. He had grown up in the city and was in a Mabari world. He had learned to look out for his fellow elves, his silver tongue convincing many of the guards that his friends and himself wouldn't have done the crime, and always finding himself pulling the race card when it would work to his advantage. However, when all else would fail, LF was a loyal man who would take the blame on himself. He rotated in and out of prison as a result. He would be let go when they'd let him, primarily as a form of good faith as he was young and they wanted him to change his life. That, and he learned how to best pickpocket a guard's key and escape when they weren't looking. His mother had trained the LF in several forms of combat, primarily dual-wielding. However, the LF had always wondered exactly what this would do for him, as he never fully understood how holding two daggers would be more practical than firing arrows or a sword and a shield or a giant two-handed weapon. His mother would often explain that sometimes hit-and-run tactics were what was preferred for the quicker folk, and elves were among the quicker folk. The LF's mother had disappeared for a time, however, and when she came back, she explained to him all that happened to her in Leliana's song. This would confuse the LF, as he had his idea that all humans were, well, bad, but this act of Leliana would allow him to trust humans who had shown him goodwill at some point in the near future. The loyal Fiancé had heard word that a Templar had slaughtered his mother without any provocation. She had been walking out to get some bread for family dinner, and she had come across a lyrium-deprived Templar who had thought that she looked like a mage she had been hunting recently. The woman killed the LF's mother, and since his mother was an elf and the Templar was a human, there was no retribution for his family. Only a token donation from the Chantry to cover the funeral expenses. That was it. The LF had been furious and had decided he was going to train in the combat ways his mother had taught him. He was going to be a great hero someday and end all of this oppression, damn it. Years went by for the LF as he dedicated himself to training in dual weaponry combat that he was initially trained in. He understood that surviving and becoming a great hero would be better than dying on the battlefield on the front lines, and for that he'd have to be able to kill the enemy before they killed him. He strove for this and trained daily. He would of course train slightly in ranged combat when he could afford the arrows. Getting as many as he needed to properly train were expensive, so he couldn't use them too often. The LF had taken up a few odd jobs around Denerim, exterminating vermin and collecting rats for his cousin's rabbit stew. He was a determined individual, but his prejudice against humans would come up now and then, usually in the form of killing those who had done his alienage wrong in an act of vigilantism, and leaving their corpses in the streets for all to see. Playing innocent because they couldn't prove that he did it. The LF had finally been selected as a potential mate for a beautiful young woman. He is generally concerned and apprehensive about the whole thing, and he understands that this is a part of tradition, and because of that he'll talk about his concerns but not openly badmouth it. When he finally sees her, he feels something that he hasn't felt in a very, very long time. Peace. He is reminded of his goal from all those years ago, and her beauty stilled his rage, and it made him want to settle down with her and forget about all his problems. After the wedding ceremony, or lack of one, his rage returns and he vows to kill the blasted humans when he gets there, which he does. When he reaches Vaughn, he refuses to listen to anything that man has to say, and in a fit of sheer rage kills him, slowly and painfully. Afterwards, he confessed that it was only him that went in, leaving Soris to be seen as innocent. With Duncan's right of conscription, he was sent off to Ostagar, being completely upfront with the king and being mildly disrespectful towards Caitlin because of his ignorance. After Ostagar, the LF had a lot laid out for him and a lot of ground to cover to end the Blight.
He would be relatively helpful in Lothering, helping out the elves and ensuring that the poor elven family had gold to go on their way. But for the most part, he would just be stopping in for supplies, news, and then leaving, not doing many of the quests there, but running into several potential companions along the way. After helping Lothering and recruiting everyone he could, the city elf would feel it best to swing by Denerim to check in on the alienage. After realizing that the alienage would be impossible to get to at the moment, he would instead follow Alistair's advice and go to Redcliffe. He would go to Redcliffe and do what he can to assist the town as best as he could. Again, him being an elf that was trying to prove himself to all these humans would be what he'd want to do. After securing Redcliffe, he is irate at Lady Isolde and her dismissive and insulting attitude. After going through the windmill, he doesn't really do anything with Jowen, choosing instead to merely leave him in the cage for now. After making his way through the castle, he sees Connor being possessed and is furious by the negligence of his mother. He recommends killing Connor, being rather spiteful towards Isolde overall and being the root cause of all of this. After Jowen recommends the blood sacrifice, the LF forbids it as an option because he refuses to give Isolde that peace. He instead chooses to go straight through to kill Connor. After Isolde orders him to stop, he will knock her out to kill Connor. He isn't a slave and does not take orders from humans. The LF decides the best way to go searching for the information on the Urn of Sacred Ashes is the Mage Circle, even though Isolde recommended going to Denerim, figuring it's closer and he could recruit the mages while he was there. He sets off for Lake Calenhad and finds himself irritated at the Templars trying to assert order over here. Still bitter over the loss of his mother, the LF will offer to save the mages primarily to spite the Templars as opposed to anything else. He is more prone to calling Colin a fool for thinking all mages are evil, and he would however let the Blood Mage girl go as he feels she deserves a second chance. The Templars killed his mother. He can only imagine the horror of what it was like living under them. Moving on to the Brazilian forest, the LF finds himself relatively indifferent to the plight of the Dalish people. The LF will offer to help Kamen and Gaina, remembering how his own love life was torn asunder by everything that had happened to him. He will find it astonishing that the werewolves would speak to him, and he tries often to communicate with them. After being offered to parley, he takes the opportunity and goes to collect Zathrian to try and force him to break the curse, ultimately siding with the werewolf's desire for being cured. After finishing off that, he'll make his way off to Orzammar and go to Balin. Yes, we will have a Harrowmont supporter soon. It was just difficult to justify Harrowmont in all of these cases because Harrowmont seems to be someone who would support the poor treatment of elves if you consider how he treats the castless. Going to the Provings to show off his skill and declare his loyalty to Balin, and he is sent off to the Anvil of the Void. He will find himself initially siding with Branka, as this would allow others to change their lot in life. However, when Caridin mentions enslavement and the control rods, he will find himself quickly swayed over to Caridin's side, as he hadn't quite realized that they would never dismantle the control rods completely. After Caridin is finished creating the helm, he marches off to the assembly and declares Balin king, asking for his troops politely. After solving the crisis in Orzammar, the LF will search for the Urn of Sacred Ashes. He will parley with Korgrim, but choose to betray him after coming face to face with the urn itself. He was so moved by it he couldn't bring himself to defile it. He will kill Kolgrim after he confronts him about it and allow brother Genetivi to live. During the land meet, the LF will be eager to go back to the alienage to see if Nessiera is still there. Upon finding out that she went back to Hyaver, he falls into a deep depression. He does his duties for the most part, trying to set up a political marriage between a hardened Alistair and Honora. The LF will kill the slavers, refusing to even talk to most of them. When the time will come, the LF will refuse to do Morrigan's ritual, primarily because he just wants to die. He was eager to accept his fate at that point because he felt it was all just so pointless for him. He wanted nothing more than to meet up back with his betrothed and hopefully get married to her and take her along with him on the road, but that wouldn't happen. The LF chooses to die when the time comes and tell Alistair he can't die, he has a kingdom to run. If you're into headcanon and you want him to live, you can say that Morrigan went to Alistair with a proposal afterwards, and Alistair chose to sleep with her. He would be angry with Alistair, but mainly Morrigan, and the LF would stab her and witch hunt for the betrayal. The loyal fiancé will not be romancing anyone at all, as he told Nessiara that he would return for her. He intends to keep that promise, and if he does slip and sleep with someone, he will quickly break it off with them as a result. He is hopeful, albeit slightly indifferent to Alistair's royalty, feeling that if he can prove himself to Alistair, he could use the connections Alistair has to assist the LF in his own personal goal of proving that elves are just as good as humans are. He will harden Alistair when given the opportunity, as this was a lesson he had learned long ago in the streets of Denerim. The LF will also harden Leliana after getting her to kill Marjolaine, reasoning showing that she is a killer and that she enjoys it. He will let Zevran live because the LF feels as an elf he was forced into this, but will find a surprising amount of kinship with the man as time develops. Their backgrounds, while vastly different, hit some of the same marks, and it will be nice to have another elf that can relate to the struggles that he had. The LF is generally a friend to everyone and does all of their personal quests when given the opportunity to do so. Now that the LF's outcomes and relationships are dealt with, let's go over his abilities and skills. For the LF, you're going to want to max out combat training and coercion, primarily as a smooth talking elf. elf that can talk a guard out of arresting some of his friends and then dump the rest into stealing. He had to pickpocket to get by at times, so he would be keenly aware of how to steal from people in an unsuspecting manner. For the LF skills, you're going to want to go all out on dual wielding on every tree. This is because of all the specializations revolve around melee damage, well, the ones we're going for on this build specifically. After all of that, or if you have talent points lying around, take the Arrow of Slaying tree. He will also take up to lethality and coup de grace in the general rogue talents. For specializations, he will be an assassin, duelist, and a shadow in awakening, obviously taking all of those skills as well.
Alright, that wraps up everything for this build. Have any build suggestions, comments, questions, channel recommendations? If so, hit me up on Twitter at @DesherTarat or leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching my video, and God bless you. Have a good day.